Hello guys, welcome to Kodamigo. In today's video, we are going to understand the difference between var, let and const keyword. In vanilla JavaScript, there used to be just one way of creating variables, that was with the help of var keyword. But now in ECMAScript, we have let and const keywords as well. There were a number of problems with var. One of the serious problem with var was that we were able to redeclare the initialized and declare variables as many times as possible. But the same thing is not possible with let and const. The second problem was that it was not possible to create a block level variable with the help of var. So in JavaScript, if you want to have a block, then functions are the only way. So if you have a function and if you declare a var variable inside the function, that will become local to that. But now we can use even curly braces and we can create a scope or a block in JavaScript. So let's see how all these things work together. First of all, let me type some curly braces. What are we doing is that we're defining a scope or a block in JavaScript. And we're going to declare two variables, one with using var and another one using let. So I have two variables, and let me go down here. Let me try to print them out. So as you can see that I'm able to print out the value of var variable, but if I hover on the let variable, it's saying that cannot find the name let variables. So what is happening here? Let me also try to run this program. So it's saying that let variable is not defined here. What's the difference between these two variable declarations in JavaScript? In JavaScript, there is a thing called hoisting that basically scans your whole JavaScript file before the JavaScript file is compiled. So this statement is same as saying this. So when the hoisting takes place, all the variables are scanned and they are declared at the top of the file. So the earlier statements looks like this. So this has become a global variable. That means this variable is no longer blocked to the scope. In fact, this is a global variable and is accessible throughout the file. So the var variable is available. Since the let variables are not scanned, they are supposed to be local within the scope or within the context. So this let variable is not available here outside the curly braces, and that's why we see these errors. Now let's understand another problem with var keyword. So I have declared and initialized a variable. If I go ahead and give it some different value, let's say false, and JavaScript is like super happy with this. It is no longer complaining. It is possible to redeclare the same variable and give it some different value. Since I'm using Typescript lang.org, so if I hover on it, this has become a boolean. I would not be able to give it any other value other than a string. But if you are not using this playground, if you are writing a vanilla JavaScript, then you actually can give it any value you want. So this was the second drawback with var keyword in JavaScript. Now let's have a look at one more example. I have a very simple loop over here. I am initializing the value of I variable. I'm putting it equal to 0. So we have this condition, terminating condition over here, and increment and decrement, right? So if I go ahead and run this, so you see that 0, 1, 2, all these values are printed out, which is fine, working as expected. But if I go ahead and write one more console log statement outside the for loop, now what do you think what going to be the value? Well, let's try this out. So it's saying 0, 1, 2 and 3. 3 is also printed out. So what is happening is that this variable is not specific to for loop. It is not this variable declare over here is not blocked to the for loop. In fact, it has been using JavaScript hosting initialized somewhere at the top. It is initialized within the for loop. So during the first iteration, the value of I is 0. So it compares the value of I, and this is true, then it prints the value and then it increments the value, and next time it compares that the value of I is 1, which is less than 3, then it basically prints the value and then increment the value by 1. So now the value is 2, and then it is going to print the value again. With next iteration, the value of I is 3. So this causes loop to terminate. Since this condition is false, the value of I is 3, which is being printed here. This is not a local variable. In fact, it's a global variable. It's available throughout the file. Now let's move on and let me demonstrate how does let works and how it is different from where. So let me create a simple block, a context in JavaScript, and here I'm going to declare a variable, and I'm calling it block level variable, and I'm using let keyword to declare this. So let's give it some value. Let me create another child scope or child context or child block within this parent scope, right? You can assume that these are the blank objects, right? Okay, and inside this child block or scope, I have inner variable. Let me give this some value. Now let's go ahead and let me have a console.log statement. I can print a value of inner variable and block level variable. So if I go ahead and run this program, you would see it's saying inner variable and block level variable. If I do the same thing, if I copy the code, if I exit this inner block, right, I no longer have access to inner variable. So earlier here at line number 5, since I was within the child scope, child block, I had access to inner variable as well as block variable. Now I am outside the block and I do not have access to inner variables. If I try to run this, so it's saying that inner variable is not defined, because obviously inner variable does not exist outside this block. It exists only within this block. So it's a block level variable, right? So let me remove this. And if I try to print the value of block level outside this block, I would not be able to do so. So I think you got the idea. And with the help of let keyword, we can create block level variables. So let me head back to the previous example of for loop. We had this example of for loop where value of I was also printed out. Now let me run this. You see that value of I is being printed out because I is available. If I use let keyword instead of where, you would see that I is not actually available outside the for loop. That means the I is local to this scope that for loop is creating. Now let's move on and let's talk about const. We have the third keyword. So we use const keyword to create constants. So let's say the name of the const that I want to create is my favorite YouTube channel. So let's give it some value. Let's say it's Kodamiko. So if I try to give it, let's say any other value, alright, so I'm not able to do so. If I hover on it, it's saying that can't assign to my favorite channel because it is a const. So we have this mechanism, this way of creating const in JavaScript now that did not exist before. Okay, let's move on with one more example, and this time around let me show you how objects and array works with const keyword. Let me define an object. Let's call this person object. It's a constant, right, which has one property, which is Kodamigo. And let me define another object. So I'm using let keyword this time. And if I'm trying to assign this person object a new object, this is not working. So if I hover on it, saying that since the person object is const, then you can't give it any new value. I can't give reference of a new object, right? And but what I can do is that let me comment this out. I'm able to change its property. It's true that I can't give it a new reference, but I can change its property, right? So if I go ahead, try to console.out, and if I run this program, you see that the value of this name property within the person object is updated even if the person object is a const. And not only this, I actually can delete the name property. Let me use delete keyword, and I'm saying please delete the person.name. It's saying that delete operator must be optional. It's basically a Typescript thing. So what we have done is that this thing is const. So if I hover on it, you see that like Typescript knows that this personal object cannot be assigned to some different value. So this has basically become a literal type. So in order to stop this from happening, I can say that, okay, I can define the type of the person object. So I can say that the type of the person object is record, and the the key going to be string and the value could be anything, right? If I'm deleting this and let me run the same program again, and you see that a blank object is printed. So I was able to modify the property of the constant object, and I was able to delete the property, right? So this is a constant reference, right? So I can't change this value, but I can change the properties, right? So in order to stop this from happening, like since I'm using the Typescript playground here, so I can use the typing things. So I can say as const. Now what Typescript has done is that, let me hover on it. Let me also remove this because otherwise it would not work. So now the person object, obviously, which is a const reference variable, and as well as this object, both are const. So if I hover on it, you see that read-only a access modifier, you could say, has been applied by Typescript, which means that you only can read this property. This property cannot be deleted or modified. And we see the same error here that it's a read-only and you also cannot delete this. Alright, now let's do some experiment with arrays. Now quickly define a constant array. Let's call this person, and this is going to have two names. If I want to remove these values or push new values to the person's array, this is possible, but I cannot give it a new array in JavaScript or Typescript because this person's array is constant. So I can go ahead and try to push some new value. So let's call this new person. I can add this new person. Let me also print out the persons. Let me run this. You see that now we have 1, 2, and 3 persons, right? Similar to this, I also can remove. Let me remove the first element from the array and let me run this program. So now you see that person Q has been removed. Now we are left with only 2 persons. So what I want to do is I also want to make sure that not only this array is a constant reference, but these values are also constant. So I can say as const, which is a Typescript thing. This array itself is const. So as you can see, that's read only now, and I no longer can push and delete any value. So in this video we have learned all about let and const keyword. Let has changed so many things, same is the case with const. So this is all in today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you are new, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel Codamigo. Thank you so much, and I see you in my next video.